In this tutorial, we'll see how durations are represented in Slippery Chicken by using both numbers and letters. We'll also look at rests, dots, ties, tuplets, their rhythmic values, and brackets, as well as beams. Basic durations can be represented by numbers, for instance 1 for a whole note, 2 for a half note, 4 for a quarter note, etc. Or we can use alphabetic representation, W for a whole note, H for a half note, Q for a quarter note, E for an eighth note, and S for a 16th note. Rests are indicated with the same duration values, either alphabetically or numerically, but in parentheses when you write your rhythm sequences. We can have dotted rhythms, of course, as many dots as you like, with one or more periods after the duration, for instance, Q dot or E dot dot. However, if you're using numeric representation, you'll find that you have to precede your dot by a backslash. That's because in Lisp, when it reads 4 dot, it sees that as a floating point number generally, so it would see the number 4, a simple quarter note, and not 4 dot, a dotted quarter note. Ties are indicated with a plus sign, and this can either be between two rhythms with no space, like Q plus E or 4 plus 8, or you can place the plus before the rhythm that's being tied to, for instance, to tie to the rhythm at the beginning of a new bar. Again, in numeric representation, the plus must be preceded by a backslash because plus 8 in Lisp would be interpreted to be the positive number 8. So if you want to make it a tied eighth note, it has to be backslash plus 8. Simple tuplets can be represented numerically as well, simply by writing the division of a whole note. So for instance, there are 12 triplet eighth notes in a whole, so one triplet eighth would be the number 12. Similarly, a septuplet 16th note would be 28, or a septuplet eighth note would be 14. Alphabetic representation can also be used for tuplets, but only when it comes to triplets and quintuplets. These can be represented in shorthand with a T or F before the rhythm. So for instance, TE for a triplet eighth note, or F16 or FS for a quintuplet 16th note. Dots, ties, rests, etc. are indicated in the same way as with normal durations. To put brackets and numbers over a tuplet, we have to enter them with curly brackets and a number. So for instance, to have a quintuplet bracket with a 5 over a series of rhythms, we have an opening curly bracket followed by the number 5, then the rhythms, and then the closing curly bracket once the tuplet comes to an end. However, you're not required to enter these tuplets with brackets and numbers. That's only for score representation. You can just type the rhythmic duration as you would with any rhythm. We can also have nested tuplets, for instance, triplet sixteenths within a triplet eighth note. To work out these durations, however, we have to think a little bit more carefully. The duration of the triplet eighth note is 12. And a triplet eighth divided into 3 equal parts would be 12 times 3, which is 36. So one triplet 16th within a triplet eighth would be a 36th note. To put this into a nested bracket, for instance, we could have a triplet to start off our triplet eighth notes, the first 2 eighth notes, 12, 12, and then another nested bracket for the 3 36th notes that take up the space of the last triplet. Beams are indicated by a hyphen sign. So if you want to put 2 eighth notes under a beam, you type hyphen, eighth, eighth, hyphen. And there has to be a space before and after the hyphen there. You can see in our example here that we've used many different attributes or ways of describing rhythms, including backslashes before dots, backslashes before plus to tie to eighth notes. We've also got some nested tuplets here. If you look at the score examples you can see on your screen now, you'll see how this is represented in both CMN and Lily Pond output.